Welcome back to Naval Action and episode 85 of A Letter to the King. If you're new to the series, it's my attempt to keep us up to date with what's going on the global PvP server, the server that never sleeps. And let's get straight into where we were last week. And I guess last week we saw the ripple effects of the patch, which somewhat undid the Pirate Nation, significantly changing the Pirate Nation mechanics. And this led to a lot of players moving out and joining into the Danes, the Swedes, the French, and perhaps even the Dutch. And probably the biggest move we saw was the Swedes start to push south of the Antilles and playing around sort of Orinoco and the ports, moving up into what one would normally consider to be the Dutch homeland. The Danes re-established themselves on Haiti and grabbed up a few ports. The French started spreading out from New Orleans, and the Americans were making headway in the Bahamas against a dwindling and somewhat limited pirate nation, although the primary clan Black was still able to field a handsome fleet. The Brits had pushed all the way down the continental join and were beginning to threaten Cartagena. Indeed, an attempt was made at Cartagena at the start of the week, which had the obscurity of having half a dozen mortar brigs in there. And of course this week saw a change to the sailing profiles of the first, second and third rate ships. Fundamentally, this is sort of a good idea. It's a bit wonky because they've only done it on half the ships, or not even half the ships, just the top three rates of the ships, first, second and third rates. And basically what they're doing is they're making the individual sails mean more, so the foresail and the yard and so on and so forth has a bigger effect on the sailing profile of the ship, which means ships with large canvas, if you like, ships with disproportionately large canvas are better at ferrying any small amount of wind, which makes a ship like the Constitution, which in its design had a very large amount of mast coverage, as does the Victory for her size. It means that they can basically carry more wind, so all ships weren't running with a similar sail profile. And I also believe they're modelling in the damage, so that damage done to particular sails will affect your sailing profile more. So what this means is certain ships, perhaps something like the Constitution, can sail close hauled at a greater speed than something like the Wazzo, which proportionally to the size of the ship carries less wind. Now this is sort of an interesting notion. It does mean that each ship will have a slightly modified sailing thing. I think they need to do a lot of sailing profile. I think they'll need to do a lot of tinkering with this. And it's also completely wonky at the moment because you have the top half of the ships, not all of them consistently have been modified. The bottom half of the ships haven't been modified, so there's some oddball situations out there, and sailing with a small fleet ship can be really sort of bazookaing. But in the long run, once it's been consistently done across all ships, it could be a good thing. And it also changes some of the manoeuvres, so going through the wind now is in some ships possibly quicker by reversing and sort of doing the nautical equivalent of a handbrake turn. Let's just give that one some time to settle in. Let's have a look at what happened on global. Well, I've set the Dutch at war with both the Danes and with the Danes and with the Swedes. Now, I'm not 100% sure if it's not really the Dutch who are at war. These two have sort of declared war on the Dutch a little bit. I'm a little bit tempted to put the French in alliance with the Dutch, but I haven't got any confirmation on that other than some behaviour that's been seen. Now, I have to be honest and put my cards on the table here. With the shutdown being I bleated on about this enough last week, so I won't go over it too much, but with the shutdown being at 9 PM and with a lot of patches going in, Other than trade runs and the odd moving ships around beyond my teleport and a little bit of crafting, I've spent very little time doing what I would normally do in naval action, and that's sailing around with my clan and setting things up for hostility or going on a bit of a biffo run. And that's because the Aussie clans, unless you're on a early start, like you're getting home from work or uni or whatever, early doors, the sort of 2-hour dead time around a restart where you can't have a port battle or it's difficult to set up a port battle takes out my whole evening. So I really had to think about whether or not I keep going with Letter to the King. I'm going to give it a go for a couple of weeks. But essentially, with daylight savings the way it is in Europe and down here in the Antipodes, a 9 PM restart takes me out of the game 5 days of the week, and it only leaves the weekend, and occasionally, you know, social life interrupts at the weekend, or a new game is released, or it's Black Friday and we're all buying games left, right and centre. So my naval action playtime this week, other than when I've been on holiday, has been the lowest I've had in open world. And part of that has been very much the opening up of Legends, where I've been having great fun with a couple of buddies, sailing round, getting snotted and snotting people accordingly. And you'll see I've got a video up of a really good 8v8 match, and we've had plenty of similar type things. We'll have a little look at what happened this week, but my intel's really weak, and I do feel sort of a little bit fraudulent trying to give a really good explanation. So I'm just going to highlight the obvious map movements for those who are interested. The Brits continue grabbing up ports. Like I say, they had a failed go for Cartagena. The US have expanded again. I think of the 20 ports that went down this week, 14 were free ports. So the Americans and the French and the Brits continue to make claims. The Spanish, Dave recovered a port, so that was good to see because he was getting a bit slack. And probably the only serious combat, I think the Americans pushed the pirates out of a port, and the Dutch rolled the Swedes back, although I am told that the Swedes got a bit narky with some of the to and fro-in with the Brits and the French, and a few of them have pulled up stumps. So I don't know if the Dutch have got mighty and given the Swedes a push, or the Swedes, who went on a bit of fun and got themselves involved in relatively small port battles but nonetheless had a bit of fun, just feel as though the whole thing's kind of pointless when you're running around with an 8-man fleet. The hotspots for PvP, this really here, if you look at the combat logs each day, this is where it is. It's all around La Torte. There's a little bit here and there, but really this is mostly pirate players being snotted by folks sailing out of the Freetown looking for sport. And like I say, given my access to the game, I'm missing out on a lot of intel, and you've got to be in it to know it. So we'll see how we go next week and this week. But again, I'm talking to you now, it's 20 to 9. I've been back home from work, I've had a feed, I've watched me Walking Dead. There's no point in getting on now for an hour or less. And then it'll be 10 o'clock at night before I can log on again. And there's, with the 2-hour window to set up a port battle, I'd have to stay up till 1 AM to set up a port battle. So it's all a bit meh. And there's just not enough players on at the moment for open world PvP. So for us Aussies in what is my time slot, and for the Americans and the Europeans who play on global, it's not a problem. But I am, for lots of good reasons actually, living down here, and it's a bit knackered for me. So I'll see next week as to whether or not I can get enough intel to do justice to Letter to the King. I don't really like doing it when I've got so little intel. It all feels a bit bullshit. Where will we see biffing? Well, if, you know, past behaviour is a predictor of future patterns, in the Bahamas and around the Antilles is where you'll see actual contested port battles. Outside of that, there's nothing obvious. And lastly, really onto where I spent most of my time sailing. So I've not abandoned naval action. It's just the only place I can get a good fight at the moment is in Legends, and it has been great fun. There's the first week where basically if you own Naval Action, you get access to Legends. I do believe some of the Euro players that's not true for their accounts haven't been granted access. Let's hope that gets remediated soon. Although I have seen a lot of players who, because I spent a lot of time on the Euro server, my first year of open world was on the Euro server, and I have seen a lot of names from that server sailing around and getting into a scrap, and it's been good fun bumping into these guys. I predicted this last week that one of the really good things about Legends right now is because it's only us Naval Actioners in there, is you're sailing with guys who you know from port battles or from open world or from getting ganked or whatever. You're sailing with them on your same team, you're sailing against them on other teams, and it really is a bit of a laugh, really. There's a lot of stuff they could still improve in the game. I know a lot of people don't like the grind of you start off with like little pea shooter 4-pounder cannons and then you work your way up until you get the sort of fridge firing carronades for the close combat. Now this actually doesn't bother me too much. It just means that when you're first in a ship you're a bit weak, and it gives you a reason to sort of, you know, you get some reward as you progress that ship to the next ship. I'm a big fan of it not being a race. I got a frigate about 2 weeks ago in Legends. I've barely sailed it because I've spent this week sailing with my mateys. So I've been running around in Navy brigs, and then as they've leveled up, I think we're mostly up to like the Mercuries and the Cerberus right now. And so that's really good fun, and I'm really enjoying it. And, you know, we've had some 8-on-8s, some 9-on-9s, some ridiculous 4-on-8s. And it is good fun at the moment. I think the matchmaking isn't catastrophically bad. I mean, I played the other games, you know, the World of Tanks and World of Warships, and I remember when they first came out, the matchmaking isn't catastrophically bad. I think they overweight the advantage of being in a group a little bit, and sort of being in a group shouldn't punish you. I think they do a reasonable job, given, you know, you've only got 80 or 90 players in a queue at the moment. At matching ships and trying to balance it with the AI. The AI is always a bit funny because it's like herpaderp. The AI has unerring accuracy, so you do get, you know, arse sniped with heat-seeking cannonballs from halfway across the map. But to be honest, if you can't sync AI, then you're certainly going to get sunk by your average player. The ships are different enough as you're leveling up. You don't seem to spend too long in a ship. I'd say it's, depending on how well you run, it's sort of 8 to 15 battles. 8 or 9 good battles will get you through the lower ranking ships pretty quickly. 15, if you're not, you know, if you get a kill and 2 or 3 assists, you'll get through there. Maybe that's average. You'll get through there in, say, 10 or 12 battles per ship. But it's not a race. If you consider it a race, then as soon as you get the lotion, you can stop playing. It really is, it's one of these drop in, have a fight, have some fun, have that moment of amazingness where you know, you knock out the last 4 on your own with a slither of hull. I had 2 battles over the weekend that came down to who was the first to sink, because we were both taking on water. I had battles where it was like fighting bees because we were swarmed by loads of little ships and we were in relatively big ships compared to them. I'll do some more videos on Legends because I think it's really good fun, and I'll maybe do a bit of a thing looking at the first half a dozen ships. And if you haven't given it a try, give it a try. I've noticed there's quite a lot of salt. Oh, they should have finished the other game before they started this one, and other such things, and I have quite a bit of sympathy for that, to be honest, despite my disparaging tone there. But in saying that, they're a software house, they've got to make money to breathe, and if this goes well, and it's a bit of a free kick for them because they've developed all the assets, right? It's basically the shining the lobby game that we used to have, and making it into something like a world of blah blahs. And to be honest, if that works and it spins some money for them, then, you know, some of that money will spill into open world. Some of the players will spill into open world. Now, at the moment, we have quite a small community of perhaps 800 active players. So having 300 or 400 of them spend time in Legends is clearly detrimental to open world. At one time at the weekend, there was more people playing Legends than there were open world on my sort of afternoon period. So obviously it's, feeding from the same trough at the moment. There's the novelty of newness, of course. So I think just chill a little bit. Let's hope if this becomes a success and they get a decent player base and a decent number of sales, well, it's free to play, but they get a decent number of people, I don't know, buying premium accounts, or let's hope they bung in some microtransactions for things like sale decals and figureheads and I don't know, maybe even the odd premium ship. I'd be all right with all of that if some of the money spills into open world. And it's also somewhere where they're crafting the UI a little bit, and the UI in Legends is pretty good, actually. It does have the same boarding model, which I've never been a fan of. That's probably because I'm on the wrong side of 300 milliseconds ping. But overall, yeah, it's going pretty well, Legends. It's been reasonably stable. There has been a few furphies with the queues blowing out every now and again, but in general it's been pretty good. So if you haven't given it a try and you're fortunate enough for it to have properly appeared in your Steam account, I'd certainly recommend giving it a couple of hours. It's pretty lightweight stuff. The average battle is 35 minutes. And apart from the 5 or 6 minutes when you're closing, it's pretty much all action. So that's Naval Action Legends. Let's have a look at the tally of Splinters, Sail and Blood. And the Brits are just dominating the map now. They're up to over 100 ports, more than double the nearest, which is the Americans. The Pirates lost a bunch of ports. I think, though, that's because one of the clans disappeared. I just had a quick look at the numbers, and I think most of that is down to a clan disappearing. The Dutch took a whole bunch of ports back off the Swedes. The Danes didn't do much as far as port acquisition was done. The French grabbed one port off the Swedes as well, I think. The Spanish, well done, captured a port back, and the Kingdom of Prussia captured a port. And something I haven't had time to bring is, I'm pretty sure the Russians grabbed a port, so well done, Russians, and I'll make some space for you next week. As far as clans are concerned, the Swedes just about clung on to 5th spot. They're actually equal 5th, but I'm leaving them there for the time being. The Danes haven't moved. 2 of the British clans improved their holdings. And Black, really the mainstay of the pirate world these days, they actually increased their holdings by 1, which is why I'm pretty sure the loss of pirate ports was more down to a clan folding than it was down to any particular port experience. So that's it for a bit of a muted letter to the king. I'd be interested in your feedback as to I don't know, do I go on hiatus with Letter to the King until Global picks up again, or would you like me to keep putting it together? Have a ponder, I know I will. And until then, give us a like, give us a subscribe. I'll see you on the ocean, and I'll catch you, mostly in Legends.